Playoff basketball is so fucking awesome.
Scouts community, our loyal Scouts followers, we just started this maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. We get probably 100, 150 views per episode. We're growing, so please, please, please hit that subscribe button if you're at all interested in talking NBA with us. Conrad is excited. He just finished. He's so happy. Look at it. He's literally, there's tears coming from his eyes. He's so happy.
There are.
He just finished his finals, so congrats. A little golf clap.
I have 4 more this next week, or 3 more this next week, but we'll survive. We will survive.
We got a long weekend ahead of us. Got a Memorial Day weekend, so that's always exciting. Yes, I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Peter Pacman. Okay, so I don't know the guy, but he's been all over IG, and I was like, I was talking to Conrad. He's like, Conrad said, Peter Pacman is the best guy to talk to.
He is.
Like, when have I met this guy?
Watching this right now, go over to Instagram and follow Peter Pacman, the nicest guy that you'll ever meet in the hobby, one of the most creative, funny, just overall an awesome dude that's been with me from the jump. I love him. Shout out to you, Pacman. Thank you for all the support that you've shown me over the year. Well, not years, but year. And, but yeah, go ahead and follow him, guys. He's great. But nice little joke there.
Yeah, Conrad was saying when he was at 1,000 followers, now he's at 5,000. Pacman was a supporter. They would chop it up on Instagram, send each other DMs, ask each other questions. So shout out to Pacman. I've only heard good things about this guy, and I think we need more hobby ambassadors, right? More people that bring others to the hobby, that are a positive voice. So if Pacman is that, I hope one day I get to meet the guy. I've heard only amazing things, so shout out to him. Conrad, you want to go with Giannis and the Bucks?
Sure, but actually, real quick, there's a little something on my chair here.
Real quick, you have to. I keep talking.
Off real quick with the brooms. Look, here down 3-0, and I've got to give a shout out again to my man here, co-host of Scouts, Andrew, because he called it from the jump. I said he would lose in 6 games. Bucks would beat him 4-2. He said, I think that I wouldn't be shocked if it was a sweep. And he said he would give them 1 game, basically just, kind of like that pity win where it's like, I wouldn't be shocked if you won a game, if someone just has a lucky moment. And that could still happen. But from the way things are playing, the way things are shaping up, and the way that the Heat are playing in general, it does not look like that. Bam Adebayo is just looking rough this playoff series. Another shout out I'll give out to one more creator before I wrap up here is South Park Cards, because he made a very great point about Bam Adebayo. What he mentioned was the fact that Bam Adebayo, when he's now got the ball in his hands, he's not really facing the basket. A lot of the times when he's got the ball in his hands, he's kind of looking at other people to pass to, but just not really finding open lanes to the basket anymore. And he's a lot of times facing with a shoulder to the basket when he's got the ball in his hands, and he's not looking at an open jump shot or anything like that. It's just his offensive game all of a sudden has just looked super basic, very one-dimensional, and it's looking rough for the Heat because of that. And on top of that, Giannis is absolutely destroying Jimmy Butler on the defensive end of the ball, just completely making it super difficult for Butler to really have any sort of success that we saw him have last year. And the Bucks are really taking advantage of this matchup, and they're killing the Heat. So shout out to you for that one, Goldberg. Beautiful prediction. Beautiful call.
It's it's a trend that happens year over year. It happens year over year. So first off, the Heat they played into the finals last year, so they had a really shortened offseason. Then they dealt with COVID and injuries. Every team has, but like you saw Jimmy Butler, the guy looks like he lost 20 pounds.
Yeah.
During COVID. Then you go into the playoffs, you trade for Oladipo, he's not with you. So all of those factors combined with the fact that the reason the Heat beat the Bucks last year was they were so hot. They were making everything from 3. And for whatever reason, maybe the Bucks changed their defense up. Maybe they already saw it or they knew that, how they play them. The Bucks aren't letting them shoot the 3 that well. And you're seeing what happens. That plus the added motivation of how embarrassing that loss was for the Bucks last year. They're pissed. You could tell they're pissed. I'm so excited. I'm really excited for that next round series with the Nets. There's not really much to be said. It was, I think the writing is on the wall here. But I wouldn't talk trash or say anything. It's funny. Like you see all these accounts like Basketball Forever, ESPN, all these media accounts. People are bashing the Heat. I mean, they ran into a buzzsaw. It happens. The Bucks are a great team, so it's not a big deal. I think the Heat have a really bright future.
100%.
So that's that. You want to move? Let's talk a little bit because I've been wrong about LeBron. I'll tell you, I've been wrong about LeBron 90%. The 10% of what I said was that the Warriors and the Grizzlies in a one-off game is more of a threat to the Lakers than a 7-game series. A 7-game series, the Lakers are really tough to beat.
100%.
One-off, they could have lost to the Warriors. They won that game by 3 points, and who knows what would have happened if they ran into the Grizzlies the next game. So that's that. I want to talk about one more thing with the Suns Lakers series. Did you know that the Scott Foster, the referee of the game last night, has reffed 11 games for Chris Paul, and Chris Paul is 0-11 when Scott Foster is the ref. And not only that, one of the playoff games a few times ago, I'm not sure if it was with Houston or OKC, Scott Foster went up to Chris Paul and reminded him, he's like, just so you know, Chris, you've never won a game when I'm reffing. Swear to God, you guys are listening.
Hilarious.
Call bullshit. Call bullshit. Go look this up. This is facts.
That's absolutely hilarious. I had no idea. And I mean, to say the least, I don't think Chris Paul has made a crazy amount of playoff games. And I mean, they have a good amount of referees, but that is pretty hilarious. As far as Lakers and Suns go, I don't have too much to say. I'll just mention a couple of things. First of all, DeAndre Ayton has to continue to be more aggressive. We're finally kind of seeing it in the playoffs, and overall on both sides of the ball, this team looks so much better when he is. It's kind of hard to notice now because Chris Paul is, I think, still kind of nagging with his shoulder injury or whatever. What happened? Yes, because of his injury, right? Especially I think it was his shoulder.
Right shoulder.
So, yeah, and so it's kind of hard to tell now but they are a better team when DeAndre Ayton is more aggressive on both ends of the basket or on both ends of the court, right? And so hopefully that's something that he can bring in next season and continue to play like this throughout the regular season and the playoffs. And hopefully then they would get a better shot at a title because they're one of the teams that doesn't have like a top 10 player in the NBA that I wouldn't be shocked if they won a title with a roster like this because they are so good on both sides of the ball. LeBron finally kind of looked like LeBron last night. I don't know if that was just me, but he kind of looked not necessarily back to 100%, healed from his injury. But he just looked a lot better, to say the least. And the same thing with Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis was absolutely killing it last night. You love to see that. And the one thing I do want to mention is Marc Gasol needs to get more minutes than Andre Drummond probably should. Or at least they need to be giving Marc Gasol a lot more minutes. He's just a better defensive matchup on that end of the floor. And when DeAndre Ayton is being aggressive like he is this series, you got to have some better defense there than what Drummond is providing you. And in my opinion, Drummond's just not very good. I think he's very overrated. His stats are a bit inflated because he is an excellent rebounder, but he can't score pretty much anything besides in the post. And sometimes when he's grabbing rebounds, it's a bit detrimental to his own team and, their production on the floor. So, it is what it is, but I think that going forward, they need to be giving Marc Gasol a lot more minutes in this series and potentially in future series, depending on the matchup.
Inexperience, right? The Suns are an inexperienced team. Other than Chris Paul, Monty Williams is a young coach. Maybe I think first time in the playoffs. Booker first time. Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson.
They were literally the youngest roster, I think, only 3 years ago in the entire NBA, and they haven't changed a ton since then. Besides adding Chris Paul and Jay Crowder. So yeah, 100% agree.
What do you talk to me about Booker? Mm-hmm. What do you see about his future potential? Do you see him as an Allen Houston, Corey Maggette? I don't even know if you know these guys. Where do you
Corey Maggette?
Do you see him as a Tracy McGrady type of career? Where do you think after all of this ends up? Where does Booker fall?
The thing is, nowadays, it is very difficult to understand, very difficult to predict, right? Because while you can say all these things about a player's, potential injury history, you can say all of these things about how good they are and what their potential really is. The one difference between predicting a player's career 20 years ago and a player's career now is that it is currently a players' league. And what I mean by that is franchises don't have as much control over what happens with their players in the offseason as they used to. We see players moving teams a lot more now than we did 20 years ago. So while Devin Booker may be a fantastic talent, he could go somewhere and team up with 2 other players and win 3 championships. 20 years ago, no one else did that. It was very uncommon if they did.
Yeah.
Right? So, they could have been a player at Devin Booker's talent level, but because they never had the other 2 guys alongside them, we never got to see them win a title for that reason, even though they were on the same talent level. So it's hard to predict. If he stays in Phoenix, I think he's got a solid future. It kind of depends on what happens when Chris Paul retires, because he's really important to this team right now for his playmaking and his defense that he provides. But overall, great supporting cast, even without Chris Paul. So we'll see what happens. It could go a lot of ways. I can't really predict it.
If you could choose, I'll give you 3 teams. Mm-hmm. And this is for fun, guys. Don't give me like this whole market cap, salary cap thing. Devin Booker goes to the Bucks and plays alongside Giannis. Devin Booker goes along to Dallas and plays along Luka. Devin Booker goes to the Sixers and plays alongside Simmons and Embiid. Where would you like to see him? One more.
Or for or enjoyability to watch, if that's a word.
Yeah, enjoyability to watch with upside potential. He gets to still do what he does, or he goes to Madison Square Garden and plays with the New York Knickerbockers.
That is such a difficult question right there, because the thing is, I think Devin Booker on the Bucks makes them a contender until Giannis's Supermax extension expires. Even if Drew Holiday were to retire during that span, Devin Booker is a great playmaker. But he's not taking on that role right now because he has Chris Paul alongside him. But we saw it last year. He was a very good playmaker. And he could be not necessarily running the offense, but he could have the ball in his hands. So that would be pretty cool. I think that having him in Philly would be all right, because that finally gives them a secondary ball handler that can actually shoot a 3-point shot, right? I think if you had just said like a trade for Simmons and like a trade between Simmons and Booker, I might have taken it a different way. But because Simmons is there, I'm just not a fan of that trio for some reason. Just the play style, I'm not sure it's going to be that fun to watch, although of course they'd be a great team. I think having him in Dallas would be pretty cool, because the two, like the top 2 picks in many people's opinion in 2018 was DeAndre Ayton and Luka Doncic. And when it came down to it, people were saying we don't need another Devin Booker on the squad, and Luka Doncic turned out to be a whole lot different than just another Devin Booker. So seeing them on the same team would be pretty cool. And look, when New York basketball is good, the whole NBA is good. It just makes things 10 times better. So having Devin Booker on the Knicks would absolutely kick ass. It'd be one of the more – it would make the Knicks even more fun than they already are to watch. So as far as enjoyability to watch, the more fun team, I'd probably say the Knicks for that reason, and the best contender would definitely be the Bucks if I had to choose. That's my answer.
I made a play today on our Luka Tigers Browns podcast. I said it's time to buy Trae Young cards. My argument for that was I think a lot of the downside was already baked in. The market's come down quite a bit, 50, 60% on a lot of cards, specifically Trae Young cards. However, what I've seen from Trae this postseason is a different, more mature game. Specifically, he gets into the paint a lot more. He puts a lot more pressure on the defense. His floaters going great. He's able to finish at the rim. And I think his Achilles heel was he tried to play like Steph Curry too much. And early in the shot clock, chuck up a 28, 30-footer early in the shot clock when you could get that shot later on. And I think he's changed his game under Nate McMillan. The Hawks are 26-11 under Nate McMillan, which is incredible. And what I'm seeing is with Trae Young cards, and we'll talk about the Knicks Hawks series, but there's all his downside is baked in, right? Cards have fallen. We've already seen the Trae's a bust. And now, whether they beat the Knicks, and I think that they will, and I watched that Knicks game, I thought the Knicks let them off. I thought the Hawks let them out. I thought that was a game where the Hawks could have won it, but the Knicks just had a little extra. But just real quick, even if they don't beat the Knicks in the series, I think there's going to be so much hype going into next season of what can this Hawks team do? Do they trade John Collins? DeAndre Hunter, Herter, Gallinari, Bogdanovich, Capella. They have a really good roster. So I'm curious, what's your take on that series, and what have you seen from Trae Young?
Last time, when we first made like our playoff predictions, I originally came into it saying Knicks, and then I changed it midway through that episode saying Hawks. Hawks in 7, right? The thing is, they have so much offense, and I mean the Knicks are obviously like a top defense in the entire league, but it's hard to stop Trae Young's pick and roll with John Collins. It's hard to stop Trae Young when he's actually shooting well from 3. DeAndre Hunter is a fantastic second option. They've got all these pieces off the bench. This team is loaded. I'm still sticking with the Hawks. I don't know if it's in 6 games, 5 games, 7. I'm going with the Hawks. And I also think that they'd have potential to give the 76ers a real scare because they actually do have the defense to slow down and beat a little bit. Which the Wizards do not, but that's besides the point. As far as Trae Young and his cards go, Trae Young is embracing the role of the villain in the NBA against the Knicks, and I'm loving it. And I guess this is a video all about shout-outs today, because shout-out to, I don't know his exact tag, but the War Sports Cards on Instagram made a post on his story saying, is Trae Young being a villain or acting like the villain, is that good or bad for his cards? And I think a lot of people said good. And originally I wasn't completely sure, but I'm going to say good. And here's why. Because a lot of times people will just look at highlights and stuff like that when they're choosing who to invest in. Who do they hear about the most in the media? Very few people actually sit down and watch an entire game of basketball. They'll just look at highlights. They'll hear what the media is saying and whatever happens to come across their social media feed. When Trae Young is being a villain, when he's doing something different and he's becoming like a legitimate borderline superstar level player in the NBA and he is the villain and it's more exciting basketball, that means he's going to be in the media a lot more. And I think that's going to cause some more people to look into his cards, whether it's during the playoffs or the next season. So yeah, I do think it's also good for his cards, and I agree with you. There's very little downside at this point because so many people have decided that he's a bust. He can't play defense. He sucks at this, that, or the other thing. So I agree. I'm loving Trae Young right now.
Me too, man. And he's priced like Ja, and I know Ja's had a few good games, but Trae Young's had a great season, and I think he has way more upside. He's way more dynamic. He's way more unstoppable long term. You know who Trae Young's career is going to remind me of? I think Chris Paul. Chris Paul's a villain. Chris Paul was never liked. No one really liked Chris Paul.
He never liked him until he left Houston and won with OKC. That is 100% true.
Remember, but even on the Clippers, I mean, remember Lob City? Do you remember that whole debacle with DeAndre Jordan when he was supposed to be signed by the Mavs and that whole weird thing? Chris Paul is not a very well-liked player. Even on the court, I don't know if you saw yesterday, like him and Kuzma had that they were like bumping each other, and then he went to offer Kuzma his hand to get up, but then he pulled it away. Yeah. Trae Young reminds me a little bit of a Chris Paul career. And I would play Trae Young cards into the short to medium range. Short to medium range. I think the next 3, 6, 12 months, his cards are going to really appreciate. And I think that they're going to hit a plateau. I don't think he has the likability of a Luka. Luka's beloved, so that's going to propel his cards higher, in my opinion. But I think there's a real buying opportunity, huge opportunity in Trae Young cards. And I totally agree. I think they're going to beat the Sixers.
I don't know about beat them. I wouldn't be shocked if that happened. I'd still probably pick the Sixers in that series, but I wouldn't say it's a 5-game series. I'd probably say it's 6, maybe 7. I really wouldn't be shocked though if they did beat them. What else, man? We got a few things. I did want to mention just one thing. This is completely off topic about a different team. I think that the Nuggets, and this is part of the reason why I picked them over the Blazers, which they now lead the Blazers by 2-0, by the way. Very exciting to see because I'm a huge fan of Michael Porter Jr. and Nikola Jokic and plenty of other guys on that roster. I think that the Denver Nuggets are legitimately one of, if not the deepest team in the entire NBA. Just let me tell you this. When healthy, this is what their lineup or their entire bench would look like. Jamal Murray, Will Barton, Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., Nikola Jokic, Facundo Campazzo, PJ Dozier, Monte Morris, Paul Millsap, JaVale McGee, Bol Bol, J. Michael Green, Zeke Naji, and then if you want to include them, Vlatko Konsar, I can't pronounce his name, and Marcus Howard. Besides the two that I just named, all the other 13 guys I just mentioned are role players that other teams would be willing to have in their 10-man rotations. They would be willing to, and this doesn't mean that they're the sixth man off the bench, but they would be great pieces as a ninth or 10th man because they excel at something in particular. And that is part of the reason that I love this team so much and why they are just so dangerous. Because even though I do think that depth is not important or as important in the NBA's playoffs as superstars are, when you have that much depth, if one guy goes out there and can't hit a shot for 8 minutes, all of a sudden you have like three other options you can put in his place. And if someone hits 2 threes, all of a sudden you're like, okay, he's good. He's made up for the other guy's loss. We're fine. We're safe, right? They just have so many backup options that I think that they're going to be relatively difficult to stop. And I just wanted to give a shout out to that team because I love the way that they play. They're a fantastic team and they just have a crap ton of depth.
It seems like they're on track to. Who would they play next round if they beat the? I guess it's still a lot in the air.
Probably be Lakers or Suns. I mean, it would be Lakers or Suns, but it would probably.
That's going to be a fun matchup. The Lakers Nuggets series rematch from last year. It's a fun series because it's two different styles. You know, Lakers have just turned into like a goon squad. They're huge. They're monsters. They're bigger than everybody. And then you have the Nuggets who play this beautiful passing ball. I mean, I want to talk about something. Capuazzo. How do you say his name?
I say Campazzo, but I don't know if that's actually
Campazzo. I mean, dude, you got to give this guy love.
Yes, 100%.
Did you watch the game, right? How hard he plays on defense?
He is he is basically TJ McConnell 2.0, which I love him for that because TJ McConnell is like one of my favorite players of all time on the Pacers. Not all time, but
he's got this weird edge to him too. He's like a very confrontational player, Capuazzo. He always is looking for a fight. He's always doing these funny gestures. I could see how he's not going to be liked, but man, that guy fit a role that's a very specific role. He's a traditional John Stockton type of point guard too. He doesn't take bad shots. He plays really good defense. He gets down the court. He advances the ball, gets it into the post to Jokic to run the offense. He's such a smart player. He makes the right decisions. Really good find by the Nuggets. 29, 30-year-old rookie. Great find.
Yep.
And three plays, he caused 3 turnovers in a row.
Yeah. I mean, he's a defensive pest for sure, a thorn in your side. And just one other thing I wanted to mention is he can also run the offense not quite as well as Jokic does, obviously, when Jokic is off the floor. But he can be that backup PG that runs your offense when, you know, your first option needs to take a break. Which, I mean, he's just – I love the guy. Him and TJ McConnell. Like, I mean, he is, you know, a mirror of TJ McConnell, which is why I love him so much. Just that defensive peskiness to him is something I admire.
Let me throw something your way. Would you trade Aaron Gordon for James Wiseman?
No.
The Nuggets? You wouldn't do that?
If I was the Nuggets, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't even probably do that if I was the Warriors. Oh, actually, if I was the Warriors, I probably wouldn't even do that either. They have enough defense. They just need some better offensive weapons, and Aaron Gordon is not that. And as far as with the Nuggets, it's kind of the exact opposite, right? They don't have enough really good defensive options besides, you know, Gordon and a few others, obviously. But they don't need a ton of offense, which he can't really provide. But he fits perfectly into their system, just cutting to the basket, getting down the court in transition, catching lobs, all that sort of stuff, and then just playing really good defense on whoever he has to. Right, he fits that role very well, and that's exactly what the Nuggets need.
They put him on Lillard yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, and he didn't play super well. I mean, Damian Lillard still shot. I think he got 37 or 40 points, which is what Damian Lillard does. But like it was a good matchup. He made it difficult for Damian Lillard. 100% agree. Yeah.
I gotta ask, who is the Portland general manager, and why could they never have a deep team? Like they never have a deep team. Like I want to say it's time to bench Norman Powell. He's just not. He's not clicking. You could tell. Bad errors. He's not playing defense. He's not hitting big shots. He airballed by what it looked like was a mile. But who do they play? There's no one to fill in. And this
Yep.
is year over year over year over year. The Portland Trailblazers have no depth.
Yep. Initially I liked the Gary Trent Jr. and Norman Powell trade, and looking back on it, I shouldn't have liked it because Gary Trent Jr. I mean, he fits his role into this offense very well. Is just a nice 3-point shooting guy, catch and shoot guy that provides whatever 15 points a game off the bench. And Norman Powell is obviously not really doing that for this team right now, right? So things are kind of rough. I don't know. I don't know if it's time to tear this team down. I don't know if it's time to make like some really big decisions, maybe trading everybody like besides Dame that you really want. Like, I don't know. It is only a 2-1 series. Maybe they still have a shot. Maybe Powell still turns things around, but it's not looking good to say the least right now. There's two series actually that I want to mention before we go. One of them being the Mavs versus Clippers series, because now it is 2-0 in the Mavericks' favor. I believe they're playing again tonight. It is currently Friday, for those of you that are wondering. We're recording this on Friday, and I think we're going to post it same day. But yeah, Dallas currently leads 2-0, and it's not looking good for the Clippers. Things are rough, like really, really rough. And and in my opinion, a lot of it is because of Ty Lue. He's just not giving the right guys enough minutes. Not all of it is. I think that the defense could be a lot better as far as Luka goes. I feel like Kawhi is the only one really playing good defense for the Clippers, which kind of sucks because they're supposed to be a much better defensive team. But Ty Lue is just not giving the right guys enough minutes. He barely gave Terrence Mann any minutes, but he's giving Reggie Jackson more. He's giving Ivica Zubac a lot more than he is Serge Ibaka. Luke Kennard, who's an $18 million man or something like that, a $40 million man, I think was his total contract, like their fourth highest paid player. He didn't even get played, I think, last night, or not last night, 2 nights ago. Like, what are you doing? What is Ty Lue doing? I really don't know. And I think that that's one of the biggest issues for this Clipper squad is that he's just not putting the right pieces in at the right time. And it's a rough series. It is a rough series. I'm not saying it's impossible for the Clippers to win, because a 2-0 lead is the worst lead to have, in my opinion, as far as the series goes, because it's only one game, and then all of a sudden you realize just how close it really is, right? You may be up 2-0, but then if someone if someone wins one more game, all of a sudden it's a 2-1 series, and it's a lot closer than it used to be.
Great.
However, the Mavericks do have home court advantage these next 2 games, which will make it more difficult for LA. But regardless, just a lot of teams in bad situations right now that I would not have expected coming into things. 100%.
Why not play Terrence Mann more? I don't understand.
No idea. I have no clue.
What does Reggie Jackson add to your team? 2 long 2-pointers? Like that's what you're gonna win?
Boring? I don't know. I have zero clue. That's just some of the stuff that Ty Lue is doing, and I'm not the Clippers head coach. Maybe there's something that I don't know about, but whatever it is, you got to get over it, because Terrence Mann should be getting more minutes than Reggie Jackson, and Serge Ibaka should be getting more minutes than Ivica Zubac. So,
do your thing with this. Zubac, Ibaka, just mix them up. Do your thing, but surround Paul George and Kawhi with Luke Kennard and Terrence Mann. That's a lethal lineup. That's tough to stop. Bring Reggie Jackson off the bench only when you want him to be your primary ball handler and get you buckets. He's incapable of anything else. He takes the worst shots I've ever seen in the entire NBA. He's such a poor decision maker. He might be the single reason that Oklahoma City Thunder with Westbrook, Durant, Ibaka, Harden lost, because Reggie Jackson was taking shots from him. The audacity of this freaking guy. He had 4 Hall of Famers next to him, and he was just chucking. Such a lack of awareness on him. I'd never understand how Reggie Jackson even plays in the NBA. He needs so much of the ball, and he has so little output. Why not give Terrence Mann the run? Why not give Luke Kennard more run? I just can't understand it. You're absolutely right. It falls on Lou. It falls on Ty Lue.
It really does.
I think the series is far from over, but
I agree. Because it's still Kawhi and Paul George, right? It's still a great duo, and the Mavericks supporting cast is not very good. They happen to be on fire. They happen to be on fire in this last game and barely won by 6, right? I think they had 4 guys that scored 20 plus, right? So that's a kind of a coincidence. but we'll see.
Sammy Conrad, they're shooting 50% from three the last two games. They're 35 for 70.
Wow. That's also like really high volume too. Holy
Yeah,
crap!
a
Wow.
lot, very high volume, and they're not that good of a 3-point shooting team. I mean, so even Luka's not that great of a 3-point shooter. He's an amazing player, but
He's
just
way overrated
statistics.
as a 3-point shooter. A lot of people
No.
give him more credit on that end of the ball than he deserves. Yeah, I agree. I don't think I really had anything else to talk about. So if you want to bring anything up, you can. But if not, looks like we closed in perfectly on the 30-minute mark ish.
Celtics Nets. I mean, let's let the
Nets are winning
Celtics.
it.
Let's let the Celtics. They just have a G League squad. It's not their fault.
And I will say this: Nets are really good. They're so good. I don't see anyone else coming out of the East. Like I think the Bucks will be a very good matchup against them. That's going to probably be the most exciting series besides the Hawks and Knicks series, in my opinion. But I think like the Nets are just so good. I mean, you got James Harden running the offense at a very high level. Kevin Durant and Kyrie doing their thing, just getting buckets. Every once in a while, maybe Joe Harris all of a sudden catches fire. Jeff Green, right? DeAndre Jordan maybe gets a couple of buckets. Like they just have so many pieces still on this team that are very good and fulfill their roles perfectly. They're scary. They are very, very scary, without a doubt. But yeah, like I'm not gonna shit on this.
I think they're gonna get clapped. I think they're gonna get clapped by the Bucks. I think it's gonna be a close series, but I think I'm gonna go on the limb and say the Bucks gentlemen sweep the Nets.
Wow. I was gonna say it's the other way around. I was gonna say probably like 6 or 7 game series, most likely 7, but pretty much every win is by like double digits. Like whichever team happens to have a lead just absolutely dominates that game, in my opinion. Just I don't know why, but that's just the feeling I'm getting. I feel like it's gonna be a case of the Bucks defense just being impossible to get by, or the Nets have way too many people catching fire.
How big is Dante DiVincenzo being out? Big deal, not a big deal?
It's kind of a big deal. He's a very good defensive piece, but it's not like losing Drew Holiday where you're screwed. He was a nice role player, excellent role player actually. I mean, very similar to I would not play style and shot selection, but as far as like 3-and-D wings go, Deontay DiVincenzo and his fellow teammate PJ Tucker, right? Like they have a solid replacement for DiVincenzo while he's out in Tucker. So it's like it sucks, but it's not the end of the world. You'll survive, in my opinion. So we'll see.
Brent Forbes steps in. Is that what happens?
Not defensively, maybe offensively he makes up.
Who's going to start in Dante's position?
I feel like they might do Brent Forbes. Maybe they try to run PJ Tucker at the 2. I'm not sure. Chris Middleton. That's who it'll be. They'll probably do Drew Holiday at the 1, Chris Middleton at the 2, PJ Tucker at the 3, Giannis at the 4, and Brook Lopez at the 5, or Giannis at the 5 and maybe Brook Lopez at the 4. I don't really know. They run a wide variety of.
That's an interesting lineup. That might be an addition by subtraction because that's going to throw teams for fits. That's tough lineup. That's a really tough defense.
It is. It's a very good lineup. I mean, they're a much better team this year than they were last year. And while they did lose out on some depth with like early Ersan Ilyasova and stuff like that, people don't really understand that this team still has a lot of pieces. They stole Trae Young from not Trae Young. Why the hell did I say Trae Young? PJ Tucker from the Rockets. They stole him. So yeah, very good team.
And they could switch. They could switch across the perimeter, right? They have Brook Lopez at the rim, Giannis at the rim, but they could switch at every position. That is, they couldn't have done that with Dante. So that's really scary.
The team is very good. The team is very, very good. But I think we will see. We'll see. I don't have anything else to say. If you want, we can close it out. But overall, great episode of Scouts. Plenty of awesome playoff basketball. I think next time it'll be Monday. So there's going to be a good amount of series wrapped up, which means that we'll finally kind of have an idea of the second round and what that's going to look like. But until then, we're just going to have to wait. Thank you all for watching. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys on the next episode of Scout.